We're there. But we are ready and raring to go. Of course, sprint race today, qualifying later today as well. Double stream Saturday, as it will now be coined, apparently. We are really in the depths of it. Final sprint race of the year, penultimate round of the season. Honestly, I'm really just looking forward to seeing the culmination of this season, seeing how it ends, and also I feel like we have got to the point in the year. I know the Constructors' Championship is still up for grabs. Like, we can talk about the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship. Yes, okay. Oh, wait, that's the wrong one. Let me swap it. Yes, okay. McLaren, Ferrari, there's still an opportunity. Of course, there's lots of history when it comes to McLaren and Ferrari as well. So it is exciting to see who will come out on top. But once the Drivers' Championship kind of ticked off the list, a lot of the time it is like, do we need the rest of the season now? Although the teams battling for 6th place will not be happy with me saying that. Haas just a point ahead of Alpine. RB 4 points in it. Yuki Tsunoda, Liam Lawson battling out for that possible Red Bull jump. I honestly think McLaren will stay on top. I think McLaren will win the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari will come home in 2nd place because Sergio Perez is doing a single-handedly just taking Red Bull to 3rd in the Constructors' Championship. Like, if Mercedes had started the season a little bit better, we might have even seen Max Verstappen win the championship, like the Drivers' Championship, and Red Bull come 4th. That is how far he has sort of dragged that team. And then on top of that, Aston Martin absolutely guaranteed 5th place at this point. Haas, Alpine, RB, I think is the only real battle that we've got left. Like, that battle there for 6th place, and obviously the money that you get in that swing as well. You know, an extra 10 million or so per place in the constructor standings. For a team like Haas, for a team like RB, that is a big deal. Like, they do need that kind of funding. They do need that kind of help. And it just means that they can go forward. You know, next season, they'll get an extra 10 million. Maybe that then rolls into another 6th place next year, and that's another 10 million. And it's just the way that you can start to build a team towards getting up near the top end. You know, McLaren have kind of done that. They've kind of fast-tracked it a little bit, you could say. But generally speaking, they've gone through that rigmarole in the last 8-9 seasons, you could argue, McLaren. Sort of starting midfield pack, working their way through 4th places, 3rd places in the constructors, and you just slowly build on top of that, moving forwards. I know at the beginning of 2023 was an absolute disaster, but it was kind of like they were holding onto the car. They wanted that little bit of extra time to get the car correct. Once they did get it correct in 2023, we can see how that's rolled on to 2024, and they've been able to build up towards a Constructors' Championship win. So that matters, right? That matters for Haas. That matters for RB. That funding, that money that they will need does really push them up a level and then helps them to build from that in the future. So I feel like that is worth talking about and worth sort of delving into. But the majority of people and the majority of Formula One fans are in it for the Drivers' Championship, which of course is done and dusted. So, will Lando Norris... Oh, wait, that isn't... I haven't updated the standings. What a poor showing. What a poor showing. Okay. Yeah, 403 points for Max Verstappen. Lando Norris 2nd spot. I think that's pretty much guaranteed as well. I know some people are talking about, can Lando Norris come 3rd in a 2-driver championship race? I don't think so. I think that Charles Leclerc will slot in just behind him 3rd spot, especially considering Lando Norris is starting from pole position. We'll delve into the grid in a second. Actually, I should probably get my stream loaded up, shouldn't I? So that we've got that on the other screen. Double podium for Haas, and it's over for Aston Martin. I mean, sort of. Aston Martin, though, have kind of given up on the season. To be honest, I think Aston Martin don't care anymore. They just want the season to be done and dusted. Aston Martin just want to get to 2026, don't they? It's a little bit like Stakes Alba. They just want to get to 2026. You could argue Mercedes are kind of in that boat as well. Mercedes just kind of want to get to 2026. There's a few teams that are looking at 2025 and going, 24 races, and we've got to turn up and do them, have we? Oh, goodness gracious. Like the video? Indeed, Isaac. You should like the video. Thank you for that, mate. Appreciate the support. Hit the like on the video, though. It does massively help out the channel. And really does help us to build a little bit further in. Oh, actually. Oh, yeah. They're playing the Lewis Hamilton clip from yesterday. Where, if you haven't seen it, he sort of discussing the fact that he wasn't quite good enough in qualifying. Should we look at the qualifying positions of the drivers and just have a little look at where they are at? Because Lewis Hamilton was not very happy at all post qualifying for the sprint yesterday. Yeah, came home in 7th place. George Russell, though, battling for pole position, and Lewis Hamilton was saying, maybe I'm just not quick anymore. And we got the first sort of inkling from Lewis Hamilton that he is not just frustrated with the car, but also frustrated with his own performances at this point of the season. And of course, since 2021, he's struggled, I think, to adapt to these new regulations. I think you could argue a touch in terms of Lewis Hamilton. Obviously, the Mercedes car has been nowhere near where we expected it to be and nowhere near where they expected it to be. The fact that he went a couple of seasons without winning a Grand Prix, something that he hasn't done throughout his entire career. And then this season, okay, yes, he's been on the top step of the podium a couple of times, but it's been the races where Lewis Hamilton has kind of come back to life. Qualifying has been tough for Lewis Hamilton. Qualifying, he's been outdone by George Russell pretty much every single time around. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that. The fact that Lewis Hamilton, is he, starting to get a little bit of the realization that this season he can't just blame the Mercedes car. Maybe needs to also adjust his process, right? Adjust how he attempts to go into each race weekend and how he builds towards maybe getting back to an 8th championship title, or maybe this is the deterioration of Lewis Hamilton. Maybe it is the end of his Formula One career in one way or another, and we're going to see him slowly progress to the end. Everyone has their sell-by date. You look at the likes of Kimi Räikkönen, probably one of the best drivers Formula One has ever seen, just in terms of raw talent. There was a time that Kimi Räikkönen was just racing for the sake of racing. Like he said it himself, it's more of a hobby to him. Fernando Alonso, I guess, is the other side of that coin. The fact that Fernando Alonso is just continuing to deliver and continuing to put in those performances, even though he is a little bit older than Lewis Hamilton. It's the to and fro's. We'll have to wait and see, I think, until we see Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari in 2026. I think 2025 is maybe just a little bit too much of an ask, with Charles Leclerc having been there throughout this entire regulation cycle, to jump into a Ferrari car and perform straight off the bat, especially a Ferrari car that might actually be in a title battle in the hands of Charles Leclerc. I think it's going to be a really tough ask to say, well, Lewis, you should be matching Charles in one way or another. I don't think that's going to happen. So it's tough, isn't it? It's really tough to say where Lewis Hamilton actually is. This year, Mercs have only performed in low temperature conditions. Wouldn't be surprised if they fall off today. Oh yeah, they're a little bit off of it still, aren't they? The fact that they don't understand the car much. Also, as we've talked about Lewis, we can talk about the Mercedes team and the fact that they come hand in hand, don't they? If the Mercedes team aren't sure what's happening with the car, I don't know. Lewis isn't washed. Tried Mercedes, would have finished P2. He wanted more money for Ferrari. He just wanted a longer contract, didn't he? He wanted a couple of years, whereas Mercedes only wanted to offer him one, I think. He wanted to have a little bit of more longevity and a little bit more trust from the Mercedes team. So, these things happen. The Mercedes team have Kimi Antonelli on the come up. I think they wanted maybe to have Kimi have another year in Formula 2. In a perfect world, I think they'd have had Lewis Hamilton for one more year. That's what they were trying to do, right? They were trying to hold on to Lewis Hamilton for an extra year and then move over. Maybe 2026 regulations come in, and that would have been the point that they would have moved over to Kimi Antonelli. Hamilton wanted 2 years. Hamilton wanted to know that he was going into the next regulation cycle with Mercedes, and he wanted to have that extra bit. So obviously, yeah, Ferrari also offered him more money, but I think it was more the length of contract. Ferrari offered him that ability to stay into the new regulations in 2026, whereas Mercedes didn't really want to do that, even though Lewis Hamilton is their, pillar of world championships and has been the man there for so long. So it goes back and forth, doesn't it, in terms of the negotiations. Mercedes wanted it slightly differently. Hamilton would have wanted it slightly differently, and both of them ended up having to adapt, and that's what Formula One is. And we've seen with the driver market this year, it's so crazy that everything can change. Just one driver moving from one place to another can completely flip the grid upside down. And even, drivers coming in mid-season, Liam Lawson coming in for the last 6 races, Franco Colapinto coming in for the last 9 races. Massive things can fluctuate and change super quickly. We've been talking about Daniel Ricciardo going into that Red Bull seat at the beginning of the season, and now we're talking about, should it be Yuki Tsunoda? Should it be Liam Lawson? Should it be Franco Colapinto? Should it be Carlos Sainz? Carlos Sainz was talked about that second Red Bull seat for a good chunk of this season as well, until he signed up to that Williams spot. So it's just like everything can change so quickly. But we are here to watch the sprint race nonetheless. Leclerc is a better wheel-to-wheel battle than Russell. I don't think Lewis will have an easier time at Ferrari. Oh, no. It's not going to be an easy one for Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari at all. If there's one racer, I think there's only one driver I'd say is like faster. I don't even know if faster is the word. Max Verstappen is the only driver that I would back to beat Charles Leclerc in equal machinery right now. I think Charles Leclerc is one of the best drivers on the grid by a considerable margin. And, there's the debate whether if Charles Leclerc was in a McLaren, would he have put up a bit more of a title battle this season? I think maybe, to be honest. Just because he's got that little bit more experience of being up towards the front end of the grid compared to Lando Norris. So I do think Charles Leclerc would have been closer to Max Verstappen in the standings than Lando Norris was, had it been the other way around. Because obviously the Ferrari had a real dip in form throughout the middle of the season. It was kind of, we all made that joke, right, about Charles Leclerc finally breaking the curse in Monaco and winning his home Grand Prix. And what did it cost? Because then the 4-5 races after that were absolutely atrocious. And it wasn't until Monza where they really came back into the fore and started being the competitive Ferrari team that we'd started seeing inklings of at the beginning of the season, with Carlos Sainz winning in Australia and then being sort of the second fastest team to Red Bull at the beginning. They then were sort of the third fastest team to Red Bull and McLaren. Even at times had points in the season where they were the fourth fastest team. But as you said, I don't think it's going to be easy. I think Charles Leclerc is a very, very tough opponent to go up against. And it's going to be a really interesting battle to see how that develops over the year. Like whether Lewis Hamilton can overcome Charles Leclerc in one way or another, or if Charles Leclerc will just continue to show, no, this Ferrari team, that's my team. You're coming into my team. I'm not bending over and making this your team for the future. Let's quickly go through the grid, though, for the sprint race. We're about 15 minutes out from the start of the sprint race itself. We'll quickly run through qualifying yesterday and how it played out. There's a few drivers that you can see have swapped positions just slightly in comparison to where they were in qualifying yesterday. Lando Norris is not one of those. He will still start from pole position. It was a very, very solid qualifying session, it has to be said, from Lando Norris. He never really felt like he was under too much pressure. George Russell, the closest competitor, got within a tenth of a second, obviously, of Lando Norris. But it did always feel like Lando Norris was the main man through SQ1, through SQ2. He was putting in the fastest lap. And then in SQ3, even with a poor kind of final run, he did enough on his first one, got it over the line, and starts on pole position with George Russell beside him. George Russell did seem like the closest competitor. George Russell talked about a little mistake that he did make, so maybe he could have been that little bit closer starting from pole position. Although George Russell, I don't think will mind, because most of the time when he starts in second place beside Lando Norris, he does take the lead of the Grand Prix going into the first corner. Even in Spain, you know, he started just behind Lando Norris and still took the lead going into the first corner. So George Russell will back himself to come out of the first corner on top. Whether or not he will do, we'll have to wait and see. Then just behind that on the second row of the grid, Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz was the cricker of the Ferrari cars. Again, sort of talking about Charles Leclerc and how quick he is. Carlos Sainz has shown a good few times over the course of the season that he can match Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc, obviously, just ahead in the driver's standing, sort of has been the better general driver in that Ferrari car. But the two very, very close to one another. A little bit of tension between them in Las Vegas. Carlos Sainz being told to stay behind Charles Leclerc. He did not. And then Charles Leclerc kind of cost a little bit of time in that phase of the race. That meant that Carlos Sainz went home with a podium trophy where Charles Leclerc didn't. So I don't think it would have made too much difference to their overall finishing position. I think the two Ferraris would have been third and fourth, but maybe they would have been the other way around, and Charles Leclerc was pretty miffed at that. Carlos Sainz, though, leaving the team at the end of the year. Is he going to play team orders? Absolutely not. And that will continue into this race as well. I can't imagine Carlos Sainz bending over to let Charles Leclerc through, and neither Max Verstappen. Verstappen starts in sixth place on the third row of the grid. Of course, a fifth place in Las Vegas was good enough to seal the championship. He is the 2024 World Drivers' Champion. I think he would have, liked to have ended the season on a little bit more of a high note. One win in Brazil, winless in the 10 races before that. Doesn't feel like he's going to get a win in the last 2 races of the season either. And going into 2025, he's in a very awkward position with that Red Bull team. But starts from 6th place. Lewis Hamilton behind him in 7th. And Hamilton was very, very annoyed with that performance yesterday in qualifying. Thought he had a little bit more pace in the car. Thought he had a little bit more pace in himself. Just wasn't able to deliver it and starts in 7th place. Gasly starts in 8th, who has been on an absolute tear recently as Pierre Gasly. He has been a real shining light for the Alpine team. Obviously, a disappointing Las Vegas Grand Prix where he had to retire from it early. But generally speaking, over the last 4 or 5 Grand Prix weekends, he's been right up there and has been the cornerstone of that Alpine team moving forwards. I know it was Esteban Ocon finished slightly ahead of him in Brazil, but generally speaking, it's been Pierre Gasly who's been putting in the performances where it makes you feel like Alpine might be able to nab that 6th place in the championship from Haas, who are just behind with Nico Hulkenberg in 9th place, Liam Lawson in 10th. Of course, no points for 9th and 10th in the sprint race, but they will be, very happy with that. They'll be thinking of that Pierre Gasly position, possibly moving up there. 1 point available, and 1 point is a huge, huge swing when it comes to those teams fighting for 6th place. Then just outside of the top 10, Fernando Alonso will start in 11th. Alex Albon is 12th. Valtteri Bottas 13th. Lance Stroll 14th. Kevin Magnussen is now in 15th place. Yuki Tsunoda in 16th. We've got Esteban Ocon 17th. Zhou Guanyu in 18th. Sergio Perez has taken a grid penalty, drop back to 19th place. And so Franco Colapinto as well. We have got pretty tasty little grid ahead of us. That top 7, very competitive. The Ferraris should be a little bit better in these conditions than they were in qualifying yesterday. It's more like pre-practice 1 where they were the fastest car. Feels like that could go into their favor. Obviously, the McLarens will be looking at that qualifying pace and thinking it's very much up for grabs for them to, make sure that this Constructors' Championship goes their way. I think they need to outscore Ferrari by 21 points, is it? Is it 21 points win? Something along those lines. Oh, what's happening in the chat? Bro, stop. I mean, just... There we go. just put you in timeout for a moment, shall we? Guys, you have Haas delusion syndrome. I don't know about that. They've been very good this season of the Haas team. Very, very good. What time of the race start? We're at 8 minutes out. Dude is just yapping. Well, I was just talking you through the grid. Just talking you through the grid. Guys, I need your opinion. I want to be a boxer against my girlfriend's beliefs. What? What do you guys think? You want to be a boxer? I mean, if you want to, go for it. Ollie Behrman will disrupt Verstappen's domination. I think everybody has got a chance of disrupting Verstappen's domination at the moment because the Red Bull car, like going into next year, you can't say that it looks like the best car going into. Like, you got to remember, Max Verstappen won this championship in the first 10 races of the season. Are they going to be able to put in that kind of performance in the first 10 races of next season? I don't think so. Like, the car is looking nowhere near as good as it did at the end of 2023 going into 2024. Probably the fourth fastest car a lot of the time now, Max Verstappen. And that is not good enough to win you a championship, even if you are Max Verstappen. Like, I know he's been able to just about grab enough points, and Brazil was a huge turning point, a huge swing in his favor. But I do think that it's going to be a lot of pressure on Red Bull, a lot of pressure on Max Verstappen, and I don't know if going into next year you can be as confident that they're going to be right up there in terms of that championship battle. I think it's going to really be... if I was going to guess now, you'd say it was a Ferrari-McLaren fight, wouldn't you? For the 2025 Drivers' Championship and Constructors' Championship. I know that they're battling for the Constructors' Championship right now. You look at Lando Norris, you look at Charles Leclerc, the possibility of Oscar Piastri improving, continuing to improve. I think it could happen. It could happen. Championship board. I'll quickly have a little look. There you go. McLaren ahead of Red Bull and Ferrari now. Ferrari slotted into second. Haas just 1 point ahead of Alpine. That's what I'm saying. Pierre Gasly starting in 8th place. That 1 point could be decisive. Could be decisive. Give my opinion. Guys, I need your opinion on the boxer. I mean, if you want to be a boxer, be a boxer. Just go for it. 7:30 start. Piastri won last year, didn't he? Sprint, that is. He did indeed. He did indeed. He is the form driver, I guess you could say. Make a YouTube short on possible Cadillac drivers. I have made a full video about it, actually. I just need to finish editing it up. Unfortunately, this week has been very, very busy at work, so I just haven't had the chance to finish up that edit. I know a couple of people have already kind of done their takes on it, their discussions on it. I think that's the only thing that, obviously, with myself having a full-time job, can't quite get the videos out in the same pace that they can, which is slightly frustrating. You know, I often see someone drop a video that I've been putting together and I'm like, couldn't quite beat them to it. But yeah, there's bigger creators and they've got more time on their hands, unfortunately. Can Piastri win this year as well? Most certainly. Starting from 3rd place. Good positions to start in. Obviously, the rundown towards turn 1. It's not a massive rundown towards turn 1, but if Lando Norris and George Russell are fighting one another, we've seen quite a few times this year, actually. 3rd place or 4th place and swoop on underneath or swoop around the outside and put themselves up a position going into the turn 1. Hulkenberg starting 9th. it's going to be Gasly, Hulkenberg, and Lawson, really. Real tight battle, it feels like, for that final point scoring place. And as you say, it's a huge swing. Gasly gets that point. They go level with Haas in terms of the constructor standings. If Hulkenberg gets that point, just a 2-point lead is actually quite a substantial lead. I know that we've seen Alpine score a ridiculous number of points in the last couple of races just because of that double podium finish in Brazil, which kind of drags them into this conversation. And they were more than deserving of it. But at the same time, you got to say, Haas have generally been the better team. Like, if you had to look across the whole season, Nico Hulkenberg has been by far and away the best of the rest driver outside of Fernando Alonso. And then you're looking at the Haas team, again, generally been the sixth fastest car more often than not, I think you could say. But we are about to get underway. We've got 3 minutes or so left. Let me just double check everything is set up for the race board. Let's get a couple of things loaded up in the background as well. 19 laps of the Losail circuit here in Qatar. Couple of overtaking opportunities, mainly down towards turn 1, it has to be said. DRS zone, of course, down towards turn 1 will be the main run that people go for. We can see the drivers now getting into the cars, radios being tested as well. And who will win the championship first, Lando or Oscar? Ooh, I mean, I feel like it could be them two battling for it, right? We could easily see a Rosberg Hamilton-esque battle between Piastri and Lando if the McLaren car is the fastest overall car next year or in 2026 as well. Forgot how short this one feels. As in, like, the sprint race, the fact it's only 19 laps. It's a little bit short. What's my guess about the tires? I guess mediums will be faster over the sprints. Softs will fall away very quickly. I think we know that generally this circuit's pretty tough on the tires. You know, you remember, was it last season? Yeah, it must have been last season where they put in the mandatory pit stops, didn't they? For this Grand Prix. And when you're putting in mandatory pit stops because you think the tires are going to explode, it's never an amazing look, is it? But yeah, as you say, it does highlight that idea of, oh, okay, maybe this is just going to be quite a tough afternoon on the tires for those drivers, because when you're putting in mandatory pit stops, you're usually sort of questioning why that would have to be the case, you know? So I think the medium tire is generally going to be the one. I haven't actually seen the tire blankets are still on the cars on the grid, and we haven't got that data through as of yet. I'll keep you updated on that. Adjust this a touch. $19 feels significantly short. Oh, I see what you mean. I feel like it's quite a long lap around here. You kind of forget how long it is. You look at someone like Austin. You look at someone like Austria, obviously being really short, and the lap times being a minute, and then I know it's only a minute and 20 seconds or so for qualifying here, but that extra 20 seconds, it's just that a little bit longer. Yeah, I suppose it's, especially with one overtaking opportunity down towards turn 1. Kind of... Oh, George Russell absolutely flying away on the formation lap, actually getting ahead of Lando Norris down towards turn 1. This is not the start of the actual sprint yet. We're only on the formation lap, but George Russell just having a practice of getting in front of Lando Norris down towards turn 1. Oscar Piastri starting behind in third. The two Ferraris, Verstappen, Hamilton, Gasly inside of the points. Hulkenberg just outside in 9th place. Liam Lawson 10th. Then we have Alonso, Albon, Bottas, Stroll, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Ocon, and Joe. Sergio Perez and Franco Colapinto starting from the pit lane. We are underway for this run. Ooh. Everybody on the medium compound tires. There you go. Yeah, data not coming through for some reason on the stream. I'll quickly see if I can fix that. Come onto the formation lap. It might just be the case that that data is not coming through on the tracker. Yeah, unfortunately not. We'll see if that fixes itself as they come around to enter the pit lane, the pit straight, sorry. Lando Norris coming around the final corner as we speak. Senna was really good. Yeah, it was actually so good. So good. If you want to become a member, or if you want to join the Patreon, both linked in the description, well worth it. £3 a month. Loads of additional content. You get a bonus mailbag episode every single week from the Turning Point. And you also get access to those extra live streams. We watched episode 1 of Senna yesterday. I was very enthralled. We are setting up for episode 2 of Senna, the watch along coming soon. Lots of Formula 1 content coming. Of course, the Formula 1 film coming up sometime soon. We'll definitely do a watch along of that once it's available on streaming services. We'll have a little look at various different documentaries. I'd love to watch the Schumacher documentary again. I remember watching it on the channel when it came out. You can still probably find that somewhere in the archives of the Formula 1 live streams that we've had on this channel. But if you do want to become a patron or a member, you can get involved in that, all that additional content. As I say, it's the same as buying me a coffee or a pint every single month. And more than helps out everything here on the channel. Allows us to invest in producing better content, getting you data like this, getting you camera quality like so, stream quality on a new PC that we managed to bring into the channel this season. But here we are then, the formation lap almost finished up. Zhou Guanyu just taking the final spot on the grid. 18 cars on the grid, 2 cars in the pit lane. But we are going to get underway. 19 laps of racing coming our way in Qatar. Lando Norris, 5 red lights go out. Can he lead going into turn 1? Gets a good launch, does Lando Norris. For the first time in a long time, it feels like Lando Norris gets a solid start to a Grand Prix. Goes into turn 1 comfortably ahead of George Russell. In fact, George Russell under pressure from Oscar Piastri, who comes up the inside of turn 2, and Oscar Piastri is going to take second place in this sprint race. The 2 Ferraris behind, battling with Lewis Hamilton. I think Hamilton's got the jump on Charles Leclerc. Hülkenberg has also got ahead of Verstappen and Gasly. Gasly now dropping outside of the point scoring places. And it was a terrible first couple of corners for Max Verstappen in and amongst all of that. He's now down in 9th place. The Red Bull outside of where he's lived his life for the majority of the last few seasons. Norris and Piastri, though, getting away in the 2 McLarens. Lando Norris absolutely flying away from his teammate. Oscar Piastri already over a second behind, but Piastri up into 2nd. Russell down to 3rd. Carlos Sainz managed to hold on to 4th. Hamilton with a very solid start. Jumped a couple of positions up into 5th place. Leclerc down into 6th. Hülkenberg the same, jumped up a couple of positions into 7th place. Gasly still running in the points now in 8th. Max Verstappen down to 9th. Fernando Alonso in the top 10 now. Lawson was the one who really missed out. I need to have a little look at what happened to Liam Lawson there, but obviously started in 10th place, now all the way down in 16th. Must have been pushed very wide in turn 1 or turn 2. Lost those positions. Max Verstappen held behind. Actually, yeah, that's a very good point. Max Verstappen, the highest rated Red Bull powered car out on track at the moment. Franco Colapinto ahead of Sergio Perez as well. Perez down all the way in 20th. Lawson and Tsunoda 17th and 18th. Max Verstappen, the only Red Bull anywhere near the top 10. Inside in 9th place, but also outside of the points is Max Verstappen, our current world champion. As we On lap 2 of this sprint race. Piastri just trying to eke away from George Russell. Russell still within DRS range of the Australian. Carlos Sainz in 4th. Hamilton still 5th. Charles Leclerc 6th. Seeing a little bit of DRS action now. Hamilton within DRS range of Carlos Sainz. Leclerc also has DRS. So does Nico Hülkenberg and Pierre Gasly. Max Verstappen, though, right underneath the rear wing of the Alpine. Looking to get back inside of the point-scoring places and take that point away from the Alpine car. That would also play into Haas's favour. Haas currently running with their car. Nico Hülkenberg in 7th. That'll be a couple of points to the good. And Oscar Piastri now under pressure from George Russell. Russell has a little look at 2nd place, but Russell has to slot into 3rd. And they come back around turn 1 once again. Norris, Piastri, Russell still our top 3. Colapinto and Perez just trying to catch up to the back of the pack still after starting in the pit lane. Colapinto just coming around turn 3. Tsunoda already making his way to turn 4 though, so a long way to come for those 2 drivers that started in the pits. Liam Lawson is, as I say, the big loser at the start of this Grand Prix. Now down in 17th place. His teammate not having the best of times either, down in 18th. And a sprint race to forget for RB at the moment. Lando Norris still leading by over a second to Oscar Piastri. Piastri then ahead of George Russell. But Russell having another little look just at the rear wing of Oscar Piastri's car. Flirting with 2nd place once again after losing that position to Piastri in the first couple of corners. A very, very solid start, it has to be said, though, from the McLaren team. 15 points would come their way as it stands. Ferrari in 4th and 6th place. It would just help them to edge away in the Constructor standings. They can, of course, win the Constructor standings if it goes their way this weekend in Qatar. But George Russell, DRS wide open, has a little look down towards turn 1, and it was very close indeed from George Russell. But Piastri closes the door on the Brit and keeps the McLaren 1-2 as it is. But that Mercedes car looking very quick again in race trim. Of course, was very, very fast in Las Vegas. We saw that Lewis Hamilton was able to get those overtakes done. George Russell actually complaining about Oscar Piastri turning into him in the corners. Have a little replay of that. I think there was more than enough space going around turn 1 for both cars. And George Russell just wants to see how it went. Let's have a little look at what happened to Liam Lawson. Oh, it was a terrible start from Liam Lawson. He gets jumped straight away by Fernando Alonso. He then tries to come up turn 1. And yeah, just gets it all wrong, unfortunately. Liam Lawson round the outside go Valtteri Bottas and Kevin Magnussen. Then Lance Stroll up the inside of turn 2. It was the replay that just shows Liam Lawson a slow start and just sort of fell away from there. He tried to get back up the inside of Alonso, and that then cost him to Magnussen and Bottas. And Stroll came up the inside, Ocon then too. And as he was trying to fight back for position, just kept losing more of them. Unfortunately, Liam Lawson there. Zhou Guanyu started on the soft compound tyre, I've just realised. Interesting choice from the Stakes Sauber team, whether they'll hold on for the entirety of it. There's where Max Verstappen got all out of shape. It was actually around turn 2 into turn 3. Verstappen just lost all the grip. That was why he lost position to Hülkenberg, and Gasly then comes up the inside at turn 4 as well. George Russell closing in on Oscar Piastri. Ooh, Piastri does close the door pretty significantly on the Mercedes car. Wasn't worried about possibility of taking that front wing off because Piastri just closes that door. Russell has to slam onto the brakes. But yeah, Max had absolutely no grip whatsoever. That was the deciding factor of Verstappen losing a couple of positions. He just understeering and then oversteering, then understeering through the corners and just opened the door for the other drivers to scream up the inside of him. Lando Norris still leading. Oscar Piastri has closed into within DRS range. Makes you wonder whether the Mercedes team, the McLaren team have asked for the orders to just basically give your teammate a little bit of a helping hand here, Lando, if you could. And preserve that 1-2. Because George Russell had been knocking on the door, but with Oscar Piastri now within DRS range again, it does make you wonder. That's then just helping him eke out away from George Russell. Carlos Sainz, oh yeah, has got DRS, so just mentioning. That's just closed into the back of George Russell's car. Hamilton is also there as well. It's a little bit of a DRS train, really, all the way from Lando Norris down to Lewis Hamilton. Charles Leclerc, the first driver without any DRS, and he's just not able to hang on to the back of Lewis Hamilton. Charles Leclerc really struggling out there for pace compared to the top 5. Nico Hülkenberg is actually closing in on Charles Leclerc. Kevin Magnussen, just looking at a replay of his start. A very solid start indeed from Kevin Magnussen. Now up into 10th place for the Haas team. If he can get past Max Verstappen, Pierre Gasly might also be there for the taking. A little bit of an arse though. 2.5 seconds adrift of Verstappen as it stands in his penultimate Grand Prix weekend. Does feel like this, even though it's the second time we're saying goodbye to Kevin Magnussen, it feels like this time is for good. Tomorrow's where the fun begins. Of course, yeah, more action to come. This just being the sprint race, qualifying for us later on this afternoon. We'll be live for that, so make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you are new so you don't miss out on qualifying later on today. And of course, hit that like button on the stream as well. Massively, massively helps out the stream in every single possible way. Lando Norris says on the radio, there you go, there's the confirmation. I'm trying to give Oscar DRS every lap. So he is trying to drive his car and help out Piastri as much as he can, but obviously without opening up the door for Piastri to be able to take the lead of this Grand Prix sprint race. George Russell, although Piastri does have DRS, is maintaining that distance to the McLaren. Just needs to hold on and maybe hope that the McLaren car ends up with a little bit higher tyre deg. Plays into their hands. Joe Guan Yu is just falling like a stone again at this moment in time. Liam Lawson's just got past him. Sonoda also. Joe Guan Yu now 18th in that Stake Sauber car. And Valtteri Bottas, his teammate, right up there. Oh, here comes Max Verstappen on Pierre Gasly. Is he going to be able to get past the Alpine? Yes. Max Verstappen ahead of Pierre Gasly down towards turn 1. And Verstappen now back up into the points, and that is huge for Haas, actually, of all the teams. Haas now have 2 points to the good, with Nico Hülkenberg in 7th place. Verstappen taking that point away from Gasly, elongates that 6th place lead that they have in the standings to 3 points. And Haas on their way to a 6th place finish in the Constructor standings. Of course, 2 Grand Prix, full Grand Prix still to run. Anything could still happen here. But we're looking like settling into a running order at the moment. Lando Norris and Piastri leading. Russell ahead of Sainz. Just outside of the podium places. The Spaniard in the Ferrari car. Hamilton has dropped outside of DRS range of that top 4. Leclerc also outside of DRS range of Hamilton in 6th spot. Hülkenberg then another couple of seconds behind. Verstappen is trying to gain on Nico Hülkenberg, but it's 1.5 seconds adrift. So George Russell and Oscar Piastri still going toe-to-toe. Piastri does have that DRS, but it does feel like Piastri still doesn't quite have the pace of George Russell behind. Russell is using the fact that he's got that DRS behind as well. Just pushing Oscar Piastri to try and make an error maybe down into turn 1 or into turn 2. Looking at the rear wing of that McLaren car. is there any actual chance for McLaren to bottle the Constructors' Championship at Abu Dhabi? I mean, technically they can win it this weekend. Constructors' Championship. They can elongate their lead away from the Ferrari cars behind. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc running 4th and 6th. We can have a look at the championship as it stands. Oh, no, we can't because I haven't loaded up. Okay. There we go. We can look at the championship as it stands. You can see there McLaren gaining on Ferrari because of that 1-2 finish that they would have at the moment. Ferrari, though, containing, sort of getting some points, keeping themselves in touching distance. But McLaren can win the championship this weekend in Qatar. Max Verstappen, of course, already at the top of the driver's standings and guaranteed to be there at the end of the season. Oh, a little replay of what happened. Sergio Perez, the light was green at the end of the pit lane, but he didn't actually get away. And Franco Colapinto, that was where Franco Colapinto, I did wonder how Franco Colapinto got ahead of Sergio Perez. He did it in the pit lane, basically. Sergio Perez asleep. The light was green. He didn't actually go, did Sergio Perez. So Franco Colapinto decided to take that position ahead of Sergio Perez. They've both made their way past Zhou Guanyu, who is absolutely miles off the pace once again. I do feel a little bit sorry for Zhou Guanyu. Obviously, his final couple of races in Formula One. Unlikely, I feel, to get a space anywhere on the grid in the future, and just absolutely nothing going in his favor. But as I was talking about, that Haas team getting those couple of points, moving a couple of points further ahead of Alpine, increasing their lead to 3 points. It's very, very tight indeed, though, still in that championship. Lando, though, disappearing up the road. Can George Russell have a lean in on Oscar Piastri this time around? No. Piastri actually very close to the back of Lando Norris now. Lando Norris has got the fastest lap of the race so far. And Lando Norris just doing everything he needed to make sure that Oscar Piastri held on to second place. Piastri is struggling through this middle part of the lap. It does have to be said that the middle part of the lap is where Piastri is just falling away from Lando Norris a touch, and then Lando Norris almost having to adjust to that to make sure that Piastri stays within DRS range going into the final sector and obviously down the pit straight. George Russell, though, is outside of fighting for that second place at the moment. Carlos Sainz still within DRS range of the Mercedes, but 4th place at this time. Ooh. And Lando Norris being told, maybe if you could just do a 10th quicker, trying to break that DRS to George Russell behind. And Lando Norris is going to be saying, well, you told me to slow down to give him DRS, and now you're telling me to speed up so that we can get away from George Russell. I don't know what they really want from me here. Just trying to... Lando Norris being conservative, but maybe a little bit too conservative. Then when he's not conservative enough. Get this. Lando Norris trying to balance a 10th or 2 over the course of a 1 minute, 24 second lap. What happened to Joe? Joe pitted. Yeah, he was started on the soft compound tyre, which seemed a risk. But he has pitted as Zhou Guanyu, and that's why he's dropped all the way to 20th and then some. Now 30-odd seconds behind Sergio Perez. And Hamilton and Leclerc having a little battle of their own. Charles Leclerc is slowly gaining on Lewis Hamilton, isn't he? Now within DRS range of the Mercedes car. Obviously, we'll get used to seeing these two side by side next season. But a little battle here to end the sprint race could be interesting to see. Charles Leclerc closing into the back of Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes car. Going down the pit straight now. Let's keep an eye on it. Fastest lap for Norris. Then goes to George Russell, actually. Russell, the fastest man out on track right now. Here comes Charles Leclerc on Lewis Hamilton, closing, goes to the inside of turn 1. I think there's a little bump there of wheels. They continue the battle, though, down towards turn 2. Hamilton's going to have the inside line around turn 2, but then into turn 3, Charles Leclerc takes the position from Lewis Hamilton. And there was definitely a little bump there. Hamilton tries to come back at Charles Leclerc straight away and isn't able to do it. Charles Leclerc up into 5th place as they go through the twisty middle sector here in Qatar. Lewis Hamilton wanting to come straight back at the Ferrari. And I think will have a little go down into towards turn 1 himself. But there was definitely a bump of wheels there between the two. Obviously, teammates next season. Not yet teammates, though. And no love lost between them. Charles Leclerc pulled out very late. Dives up the inside of Lewis Hamilton. There's a little bit of a touch of wheels as they go towards turn 2. Hamilton has that inside line, but Charles Leclerc just hangs it around the outside of turn 2. Makes sure that he has to be given that space, and then into turn 3 gets the move sealed. Cost both of them, though. Leclerc now 3 seconds adrift from Carlos Sainz, so unlikely to catch up to the back of his teammate. But Hamilton, I don't think, has the DRS. Here comes George Russell, though, on Oscar Piastri, and that move came from almost nowhere from George Russell. Actually, because Oscar Piastri has dropped outside of DRS range of Lando Norris. Think Lando Norris being given the hurry up. He's now hurry up too much. He's going to have to come back in to help out his teammate a little bit more. Lando Norris leading still from Oscar Piastri. Nearly a second and a half, though, the gap. So Lando Norris is going to have to slow down significantly. He's going to give DRS to his teammate. And Lando probably getting just frustrated with having to give up lap time. George Russell on the radio. And also still complaining about Oscar Piastri being late in the braking zone. Carlos Sainz, though, has been looking at that battle between Piastri and Russell and closing into the back of the Mercedes car. He did. I think, it was fair from Oscar Piastri. It was late. It was a late move to the inside, but fair. Oh, thank you, Arios, though. A member for 2025. Oh, no, sorry. Haas better than Aston Martin in 2025. Could easily happen, to be honest. I think Aston Martin have got all their eyes on 2026. Could easily happen where Aston Martin just have a real drab year of nothingness, to be honest. Lando Norris has slowed down a chunk. And Lando Norris saying, look, starting to struggle with the tyres here. Am I going to give up enough pace and sort of make the tyres that little bit worse? And the team saying, yes, you need to drop back. You need to help out Oscar. Sergio Perez has come into the pits for a front wing change. I think this is all about the Grand Prix and maybe trialing a different front wing for the Grand Prix running. Sergio Perez being used as a guinea pig, running around in 19th place. An 11-second pit stop, so no chance of him coming back anytime soon. Thank you for subscribing, CJ Sports. Appreciate that, mate. If you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button as well for the Qatar Grand Prix sprint. We've got 5 laps left to go. And still a little bit of a battle to play out here. Lando Norris has slowed down to give Oscar Piastri DRS. But even with the DRS, Oscar Piastri under pressure from George Russell. And this time around, George Russell not able to make a move down towards turn 1. Carlos Sainz is again laying in wait, hoping that something happens between those two. Just gives the Ferrari an opportunity to jump up into one of the podium places. Charles Leclerc has still maintained his 5th place over Lewis Hamilton. He grabbed that from his future teammate a couple of laps ago, and Hamilton has just had to sit in 6th place. Nico Hülkenberg running in 7th. A couple of points for Haas that would make all the difference to their Constructors' Championship season. And Max Verstappen, the final point-scoring place. Gasly behind by 2.5 seconds is not going to be able to get back up into 8th. So Alpine are going to go pointless in this Qatar sprint, unless something dramatic happens out in front. Fernando Alonso running in 11th place. Bottas has done well to run in 12th in that Stake Sauber car. The other Aston Martin of Lance Stroll behind him 13th. Ocon, Albon, Lawson, Tsunoda, Colapinto down there as well. Zhou Guanyu and Sergio Perez have both pitted, so they are miles adrift of the rest. In fact, Zhou Guanyu is just being caught up by Sergio Perez. So we might see a Sergio Perez lunge up the inside to go for 19th place on the Chinese driver. Lando Norris struggling. Yes and no. He is struggling, but mainly because he's not being able to actually get the tyres to the temperature that he wants, because he's slowing down considerably to make sure that Oscar Piastri is still within DRS range of the leader. I think we would have seen Lando Norris disappear up the road considerably had he not had to sort of slow down and help out Oscar Piastri a few times throughout this Grand Prix. Meant that George Russell has remained in 3rd place rather than nabbing 2nd place from Piastri again. Did start there, of course, George Russell dropped a place to Piastri at the beginning, down in towards turn 1. Carlos Sainz has just been laying in wait as well in 4th place, hoping and waiting for something to happen in front of him. Nothing as of yet for Carlos Sainz to take advantage of. Charles Leclerc up into 5th place, got back ahead of Lewis Hamilton in 6th. They are the top 6 as it stands. The Red Bulls of Max Verstappen sort of missing from this battle, really. We're used to seeing Max Verstappen in and amongst the podium places. He's all the way down in 8th place. And his teammate Sergio Perez running around at the back of the pack. Sergio Perez actually dropping away from Zhou Guanyu, and Oscar Piastri once more has to be defensive. George Russell has a little look, just a little jink over to the right-hand side of the track from George Russell, letting Oscar Piastri know that he is still there with 2 laps left to go in this Grand Prix. One more opportunity, you'd say, for the Mercedes to have a go down towards turn 1. If Oscar Piastri can hold on there, then he should hold on to 2nd place. Oscar Piastri, though, is outside of DRS range of Lando Norris at the moment. Lando Norris is going to have to slow down by a couple attempts to give Piastri the helping hand that I think he does need, because George Russell will certainly be looking to have a little lunge up the inside. I don't think Lando Norris is actually going to slow down enough. Piastri actually dropping away from Lando Norris considerably again through that middle sector. Piastri so much slower than Lando Norris. Hulkenberg now on board with him. He's running around in 7th spot. Great driving under pressure from Piastri. I think, yes, but also we've got to give a little bit of a round of applause to Lando Norris in that. If they do manage to hold on to the 1-2, I think Lando Norris would have been a considerable reason why. There's no DRS for Piastri this time around, though. DRS for George Russell. He's going to go lunge up the inside of turn 1. Oscar Piastri closes the door. Has he done just enough? Yes, he gets ahead of George Russell into turn 2 as well and round turn 3. So Piastri, even without the DRS there on the final lap of this sprint, has been able to hold on to 2nd place ahead of George Russell. George Russell, no real overtaking opportunities through this middle sector, unless he lunges up the inside somewhere you wouldn't expect him to be. Carlos Sainz still 4th, Charles Leclerc 5th, Hamilton 6th, Hulkenberg 7th, and Max Verstappen in 8th place would be our points scoring positions. Zhou Guanyu actually making a gap. I think the Red Bull are running some kind of different run, right, with that front wing. I don't think Sergio Perez's pace is 3 seconds adrift of Zhou Guanyu's Stake Sauber. I think they kind of left that gap for a reason. Here we are then. Lando Norris is going to come around the final couple of corners onto the pit straight and take a fairly comfortable victory, is Lando Norris. Side by side with Oscar Piastri. Wait. And he allows Oscar Piastri to win the sprint. Oscar Piastri takes the victory. Lando Norris drops into 2nd spot. returns the favor. Wow. That is wonderful from the McLaren team. Allows Oscar Piastri to take the win. And a gift to Piastri from Lando Norris. George Russell in third spot. Carlos Sainz fourth. Charles Leclerc fifth. Lewis Hamilton in sixth. Nico Hülkenberg seventh. And Max Verstappen in eighth. So it was, as I say, a very comfortable race for Lando Norris. He was slowing down to help out Oscar Piastri. And Piastri gets the victory there. A W for the Australian. Back-to-back Qatar sprint wins for Oscar Piastri. 15 points for the McLaren Mercedes team. They are still leading the the Constructors Championship, I should say. 30 points now, the gap. And of course, you would look at that and say, why on earth has Lando Norris let that happen? But it's all that teammate building that relationship between the two. Of course, we had the papaya rules discussions throughout the season, the to's and fro's of that. Which, it's all about the Constructors Championship for them. It's all about building that gap to Ferrari. And it doesn't matter which way around the McLarens come home. Oscar Piastri taking the win. Lando Norris coming home in second place. And Norris on the radio. Nothing said. Okay, I was wondering if we were going to get a little bit of an insight there. And Lando Norris had to slow down considerably, to be fair, didn't he? Let's see what they say in the interviews then. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri will be very happy. Like, they will be, but just a little bit weird. A little bit weird to see that from the McLaren team at the end. They obviously would have discussed it before the Grand Prix itself. I imagine that wouldn't happen in the full Grand Prix, but in a sprint race, Lando Norris not too worried about taking home the victory here in Qatar. And neither driver too ridiculously elated in their celebrations at this point. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri both get out of the car without really too much of a fuss. But there it has ended. So, just to run through it one final time, Oscar Piastri takes the victory here in Qatar. Lando Norris in second spot. George Russell on the podium for the Mercedes team in third. Both for the Ferraris just behind in fourth and fifth. Lewis Hamilton comes home in sixth place. Nico Hülkenberg, 2 decisive points for the Haas team. That feels big in that battle for sixth place in the Constructors. Max Verstappen, the fastest Red Bull car out on track in 8th spot, takes 1 more point home to add to his already confirmed Drivers' Championship. Pierre Gasly and Kevin Magnussen, the 2 drivers that, had this been a race, a full Grand Prix, they would have scored points. So bodes well for Gasly and Magnussen going into qualifying and into the Grand Prix later on tomorrow. But then Alonso, Bottas, Stroll, Ocon, Albon, Lawson, Tsunoda, Colapinto finished. It was sort of a bit weird. Zhou Guanyu a distance behind after a pit stop. Sergio Perez as well. Delve into why that happened before qualifying later today. But we will be back live once again. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure that you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on qualifying later on this afternoon. We'll be back to cover it live with all of you guys, hopefully, and even more. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you later.